Christian Lay from Vermont.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for your time. Ms. Goitein, thank you so much for being here. I want to break this down in simple terms for the millions and millions of Americans who have never heard of FISA, who have no idea when we talk about the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, what we're talking about. So if you'll indulge me, I'd like to walk through it piece by piece. When we talk about communications data, we're talking about texts, we're talking about emails, phone numbers, DMs, that kind of thing, is that right?
Sort of any, it's actually any information that can be acquired under Section 702, any foreign intelligence information of any kind. So it could include other types of data. I think that the focus tends to be on communications because communications are some of the most private sort of information that we have in exchange.
In Section 702 allows the government to take huge sets of data from companies like Verizon or T-Mobile as part of its stated mission of trying to track down terrorists and other security threats. Is that?
No, that's actually, there's sort of two separate issues there. One is sort of this data broker loophole by which the government buys data under no statutory authority whatsoever. Right, so that's not under FISA, it's not under Section 702, it's just they do it because they think they can, because they've decided they can. And so, and I think that's trying to change, right?
I think that's a really important distinction.
Yes, 702, there is a target, and they are collecting information of or concerning that target, and so they're collecting the target's communications data on the target. The issue, of course, is that the foreign target doesn't have to be suspected of any wrongdoing, and all of that foreign target's communications with Americans would be swept up as well.
And so that data may also include Americans' personal, private information, right?
There is a large amount, and the PCLOB used that word. We don't have an estimate. The government refuses to give us one. There is a large amount of Americans' personal data, information, communications.
And I know this is something that Vermonters care deeply about. Is who's protecting their personal private information. I'm sure that's true for many of us on this committee. So, okay, now here's the rub, right? So there's this huge secret database containing all kinds of information on Americans and non-Americans, as you said, and the government says it can search that database without a warrant. That's what they're claiming. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So let's say my emails were caught up in one of these data sets, landed in the database. Could the FBI search the database for Becca Balint and access those emails without a warrant?
Yes.
And this is what we've been referring to today as a kind of a backdoor search.
Exactly.
Is that correct? So has Section 702 ever been used to spy on a member of Congress? In other words, has the government used a backdoor search to find data on elected officials?
The government has run backdoor searches on members of Congress. We don't know whether any data was returned, whether they used that data, but they have attempted to find and use data of members of Congress.
So obviously, deeply concerning, these backdoor searches, deeply concerning. Who is vulnerable? You know, are regular people vulnerable? This is the thing that I want Americans outside of this committee, outside of Congress, to understand. Is anyone vulnerable to this?
If you communicate with foreigners overseas, you are vulnerable.
If you communicate with foreigners overseas, you are vulnerable to this backdoor search.
Yes, I mean, the government has to have a foreign intelligence purpose for the Section 702 program, but foreign intelligence is defined so broadly that it can include information that simply relates to the U.S. conduct of foreign affairs.
So essentially, any person with an email account or a cell phone could potentially be a target of government surveillance by our government, and there's no requirement that the government get an actual warrant to spy on our personal communications. Is that what we're trying to get at here?
Yeah, so the government would say that you're not a target because the target was the foreigner overseas, but of course, if they are then looking for and using your information, that kind of feels like targeting to me, so it becomes a bit of a semantic sleight of hand.
I agree, and what would happen if we just let Section 702 expire?
I'd be concerned about that for a couple of reasons. I'd be concerned, first of all, that the government would go ahead and obtain the same information in other ways that actually come with less oversight, whether it's, buying up data from data brokers, whether it's other forms of surveillance under Executive Order 12333, and there are even fewer protections for Americans' privacy and civil liberties in those contexts than under Section 702. Also, I would point out that the government actually has made a case that Section 702 is valuable for national security insofar as it permits the collection of foreigners' communications. And so the foreigners' communications that have been obtained have been shown to have national security value. What the government hasn't shown is evidence that warrantless searches for Americans' communications has had any significant national security value.
I appreciate it. I see that my time has expired. I just want to say, one of the things that I try to do in this committee is really try to break it down for people outside of these halls, these powerful halls of Congress, to explain why it is that we do the work that we do. Again, I appreciate all of your time, and I yield back.